Fever is something almost everyone has experienced at one point or another. When our temperature rises, it's easy to panic or assume the worst. We've all heard things like, a fever is always bad, or you should never let a fever get too high, but are these really true? To help clear the air and uncover the truth, Barbara O'Neill, a well-known health educator, author, and speaker, widely recognized for her expertise in natural health and wellness, to reveal the most common fever myths. In this video, we'll explore what fever really means for our bodies, why it happens, and how we should actually approach it. Get ready to discover the truth behind the temperature.
And one of the best things you can get when you've got a cold is a fever. What did I call it? Best. When I trained as a nurse, fever was our enemy. But when you understand the human body and how it works, and look what a fever does, you begin to realize fever is actually your friend. And fever has a purpose. So rather than when something happens to the body looking for a drug, oh no, we don't do that anymore, a herb, something to stop it, look at why is it there? And how can we work with it to bring about healing? It's like one young man from Romania, he often dialogues with me, and his little one had a fever, so rushed straight to emergency. You know what I think? Why would you do that? All my children had fevers, but I never did, because I thought, well, why is it there? And then it's usually because maybe they're teething, maybe they've got a cold. It has a purpose. So this young man was told to take a tablet to stop the fever. I don't know, do you have Panadol or Tylenol, something like that? Oh, and the fever goes away. 4 hours later, once the drug's worn off, what happens? Fever comes back. So when you take the drug again, fever goes down. It doesn't make any sense to me. What you've got to look at is why is it there, that it has a purpose, and when it's finished its purpose, guess what? The fever will go down. And so he contacted me and said, it's just driving me crazy. I can't sleep at night. I don't want to give my child this drug, and yet every time the drug wears off, the fever comes back. And I have to be, of course, gracious, but you almost feel like saying, are you getting the message? That's why it's so important to do this. Listen, what's the body saying to you? Now, my husband, he loves burning off. Whenever rubbish builds up, burns it off, burns it off. It's always burning off. And sometimes what happens to the fire? Yeah, it gets away. I know when I come home, the fire got away because there's black all over the place. And what does he do to put the fire out? What's the best thing to put the fire out? Water. Same with a fever. So think of my husband with his hose, and you don't have to put the hose over someone, and you can be a little bit more gracious, and they can go into the shower or they can go into a tub of water. Not a hot shower, not a cold shower, but a lukewarm. Now, if you don't have a fever and you go in a lukewarm bath, it'll be like the same temperature. But if you have a fever and go into a lukewarm bath, it'll be a little cool. But you won't get that shock. So remember, fever has your friend. It has a purpose. So what's its purpose? To boost your immune system. So rising the temperature in the body stimulates the bone marrow to make more red and white blood cells. There's your immune system. But also, high fever can burn out any harmful pathogens in the body. And when a person has a fever, it increases their metabolic rate. That means it increases the blood movement through the body, the lymphatic movement through the body, so it boosts healing. That's what a fever does. And at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, we create fevers every afternoon in the steam sauna. We put the people in the steam sauna. Well, they choose to go in. It's like a little wooden hut, and they sit in and they get very, very hot. Then they run out and dive into the creek and then back into to the steam sauna, and they do that 3 times, we're creating a fever. And the reason the cold is there is because our brain does not like to get hot. That's the only part of the body that does not like to get hot. I've never heard of people putting hot compresses on the brain, have you? No, if someone has a fever or a headache, what sort of compresses do you put there? Cold, because that's, nice. See, listen, watch and observe. The only time I have found a child will convulse with a fever, and I think that's why many people rush to emergency with a little one with a fever, because they fear a convulsion. Now, I've read up much on this because it interests me greatly, because I want to dissipate the fear. And no child has ever sustained brain damage from a convulsion from a fever. It's good to know that. And the only time a child will really convulse with a fever if the child is dehydrated. And so water puts the fire out. Water, fire out. So water meaning in and out. So water on the outside could be a cold shower, it could be sponging the body with lukewarm water, it could be shower, bath, cold on the head. And what happens if you put a hot body into a tepid or lukewarm bath, when they get out, the water will be hotter than when they went in. Where's the heat come from? It's been pulled out of the body, because the best conductor of hot and cold is water. And often when someone has a fever and they're getting uncomfortable, it's because the body can't get rid of the heat quick enough. And water will pull that heat out. And water on the inside. So suck on ice, ice blocks, anything to get the fluid in. So if I had a baby that had a fever, I would just feed them all the time. Every half hour if they wanted to go on, because I wanted to maintain their hydration, their fluid levels inside the body, and then I knew that there was no danger of the child convulsing. What if a child won't drink water? What if they won't even drink anything and they're getting very hot? Even just laying them in a bath, if they're getting dehydrated, the skin will absorb the water from the bath. And another is to give them an enema, just a warm water enema. That's the quickest way to hydrate the body. A person maybe feel vomiting or sick and they can't drink much water. You can put 2 cups of water into the colon and it'll take it up like that. Now that's quicker than a drip in the arm. And if my child had a fever and was vomiting and couldn't drink, I have to tell you, I'd much rather give an enema at home than to rush to hospital, have to wait in casualty and wait behind the people having heart attacks and they've just lost a foot, etc., because that's what happens in emergency. The serious cases get seen first. And so a child with a fever can often go down the list. Wouldn't you rather be home? And just give the enema to the child, and then the hydration comes up. And also remember when all the waste is burnt up, the fire goes out. Proverbs 14 verse 6 says, knowledge is easy to him that understands. When you understand what a fever is, when you know how to treat it, there is nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. And it'll zoom up healing. So this young man who was saying, I can't sleep. Every time I give a drug, fever goes down and the fever comes back. And I told him what I did. I said, just keep the child well hydrated. Even just let them suck on a cloth, ice, anything, but get that water in. And put the little one in a tepid bath. She's hot again in an hour, put her back in the bath. She's hot in half an hour, put her back in the bath, put her back in the bath. And what you're doing, you're not totally eliminating the fever, you're just bringing it to a comfort spot, to the child's comfort. The next day he emailed me and he said, the fever's gone. I said, you let it take its course. But can you see how you can prolong the misery of a fever for days if you keep stopping it, because it's going to come back? Let it take its course. And all through Europe, for centuries, fever has been used as a therapy to help fight many diseases.
In conclusion, understanding fever doesn't have to be a mystery. While it's a natural response to infection, fever itself is not something to fear. It's often a sign that your body is actively fighting off an illness. As Barbara O'Neill has shared, many of the myths surrounding fever, such as the idea that it's always dangerous or that it should always be treated with medication, are rooted in misunderstandings. In reality, fever can be a helpful tool in the healing process. The key takeaway here is to listen to your body. Fever is just one of many ways your body communicates that something is happening. While it's important to monitor it and seek medical help if needed, remember that sometimes the best thing you can do is trust your body's natural defense mechanisms. By staying informed and paying attention to how you feel, you can make smarter decisions about when to seek help and when to let your body heal on its own.